This is the WTF Bach podcast. The podcast about Johann Sebastian Bach, brought to you by his prodigal son, WTF Bach. Join WTF Bach as he guides your mind through a contrapuntal journey. Why don't you let WTF Bach guide you? And now, here's WTF Bach.
It's Evan Shinners. I'm glad I stopped where I did in the previous puzzle canon episode because I had done a more or less cursory study of the canon that will be the topic of today's episode. I've had time to look deeper at this canon, this famous fa mi et mi fa est tota musica, which will be the focus of today's episode, the puzzle canon BWV 1078. I know one of my Instagram followers specifically asked for this piece a few months ago. Ask and you shall receive. Now, before we begin, in case this is the first episode of the WTF Bach podcast you're listening to, welcome. We want to recap what a puzzle canon is. They are compositions of a very different sort of most of Bach's music you might hear in concert. They are music made from typically one line of music that combines with itself sometimes up to 8 times, as we saw in the previous episode, to form a musical organism. If the one line is a cell of music, it duplicates and forms an organ. Most of these compositions appear in albums, civil registries, etc. It's for that reason that they have a name in German, Stammbuch canon. Now, a Stammbuch is like an intellectual guest book. Friends and families come to your very high-class party, they sign your Stammbuch, and they want to show 2 things. Firstly, how inventive they are, that is, the person writing in this book. How clever is the guest signing the book? But also, secondly, the inventiveness of the host, who now has got to go and decode your very clever message. Now, Bach would sign these Stammbücher with symbols and cryptic messages within these canons, or above or around these canons, that probably conveyed much more meaning about the relationship between Bach and the recipient than we possibly could know, but we do our best to decode them some 300 years later. And I think what I failed to do in the last episode is give you a broader sense of what these puzzle canons really are. As in, if you've got the impression that Bach writes this line of music, and once you receive this line of music, you're supposed to go find a band who can pick up and play it and solve it, as it were, then I think I've surely deceived you. I'm actually going to quote from some excellent writing by a new scholar I've stumbled upon at St. Petersburg, who also has a very good book on the art of fugue, by the way. His name is Anatoly Milka, who has a lovely essay on this canon. I will put the link in the episode description. He understands very well how a recipient would have understood such an entry in his Stammbuch in the 18th century. Quote, "While album canons belong to the genre of musical composition, this is not their sole purpose. Although they feature a musical text that can be played, the purely musical text is only one part of the composition. The verbal text, too, is usually, if not a major, at least an equal element of the puzzle canon. Hence, these works are not intended either for concert performance or for music making, although their musical aspect is meaningful. It is not by chance that we will almost never find musical instruments to be used, with the small exception of the cases in which this has a special significance. The principal instrument for the performance of an album canon's musical text is intended to be the human inner ear. The musical layer of the composition is addressed, however, not only to the ear, but even more to the intellect of the individual who will interact with the composition in a kind of spiritual game. Therefore, it would be more accurate to talk about the notational aspect of such opuses." So thank you, Mr. Anatoly Milka. It's important to see these, as I've said before. I've put pictures in the episode descriptions, and if anything, they're quite striking as they appear on the page. So be sure to go into these episode descriptions and take a look at them, just how beautiful they are, firstly. And it's also important to know that these were probably never played in Bach's day. That is, if we correctly understand the Stammbuch canon, these little things ran around the mind of Bach's, and that's where they stopped. But this being a podcast, we do want to hear these. We want to imagine what kind of sound was running through Bach's mind, because if they can't run through our mind just by looking at it, then we should hear it. What was going on in Bach's mind when he stood for possibly only a brief few seconds over this guest book and then signed it.
WTFBach.substack.com. The only place for you to find all things in the mind of Evan Shinner.
So now I'm going to go through line by line and describe what this looks like on the page, but again, you will have the image in the description. First, it begins with a line with a very big capital F, and then it continues. Fa, mi, et mi fa est tota musica. That's the first line. Fa, mi, et mi fa est tota musica. Then beneath it, we've got another line, a staff of music in the soprano clef, 4 notes in half notes, and above the 4 notes, Bach has written F, A, B, E, repetitur. Beneath those 4 notes, he's written fa, mi, fa, mi. Okay, going on. Beneath this, he's written canon, sopr, fa, mi, a, 7, post, tempus musicum. We're going to discuss what this means. And then there is a line which is the canon itself. 2 lines of music there. And then beneath the music, Bach has written this very ornate calligraphy in Latin, lots of letters capitalized, and to the lower left, he has signed it the 1st of March, 1749 in Leipzig. Okay, so we're going to inspect every element in more detail. Firstly, the first line, fa, mi, et mi fa est tota musica. Okay, F, E, fa, mi, and mi fa, E, F, is all of music, or is the whole of music. So WTF does that mean? Fa, mi, and mi, fa is the whole of music. As cryptic as this sounds to us today, the Baroque musician probably would have recognized this motto as one that accompanied a musical treatise, especially those on what we call psalmization. That is the way that people would sing music. That is do, re, mi, or ut, re, mi, or ABC, baby, you and me. I think that's my second Jackson 5 reference on this podcast. Anyhow, treatises in the Renaissance and in the Baroque were often accompanied by this sort of motto. And in fact, only a few decades before Bach's Stammbuch entry, we have a man named Johann Heinrich Buttstedt, Buttstettet, in 1717, who has a treatise where the phrase ut, re, mi, re, fa, la, est tota musica et harmonia eterna. So the idea here is that thing 1 and thing 2 is all of music and eternal harmony. So in Buttstedt's case, he's written ut, re, mi, which is C, D, E, and re, fa, la is all of music and eternal harmony. It's important that we see that one thing here is typically the opposite of the second thing, or stands in contrast to the second thing. So these sorts of phrases that occur in the Renaissance and the Baroque is sort of like thing 1 and its contrasting thing. That's all you need. That's the entire element of music. So for Buttstedt, ut, re, mi, 3 notes of a scale, the first 3 notes of the major scale, and re, fa, la, that is the minor triad. That's all you need to know. And when you actually put ut, re, mi, and re, fa, la together, you've got the outline of the hexachord, as in the first 6 notes of the scale. Now, Buttstedt's treatise is itself a comment on a treatise by Matheson in 1713, and there is this debate that's going on. You know, they're trying to figure out how they should call pitches. Is it movable do? Is it fixed do? They're still doing it today. Trust me, in the halls of Juilliard, there are very futile debates about whether a D major chord should be called a major 2 chord or if it's the 5 of 5. I mentioned the hexachord, the first 6 notes of the scale, and it's important that we know that the 7th note, this B or C, S-I, that was a relatively recent invention because people learning psalmization back then would sooner modulate than they would sing do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, do. They would sing do, re, mi, fa, do, re, mi, fa, or some version of that, because what they're outlining here is 3 whole steps and then a half step, right? 1, 2, 3 whole steps, half step, and then its equivalent just up. 3 whole steps and then a half step. Now, this brings us to this thing called the Guidonian hand. Totally worth a visit to this Wikipedia page. I will put it in the episode description. I'll read the first paragraph. The Guidonian hand was a mnemonic device used to assist singers to learn to sight sing. Some form of the device may have been used by Guido of Arezzo, a medieval music theorist who wrote a number of treatises, including one instructing singers in sight reading. The hand occurs in some manuscripts before Guido's time as a tool to find the semitone. Going on, some person in the 12th century described Guido as using the joints of the hand to aid in teaching his hexachord. So when you see an illustration of this, you see a picture of the hand, and then you see on each joint, on each of the knuckles, some form of solfege or some form of a note. The Guidonian hand is closely linked with Guido's new ideas about how to learn music, including the use of hexachords and the first known Western use of solfege. So the important takeaway there is to find the semitone. That's really what it's all about, the semitone, the half step. Okay, so now we've at least got some clue of what's going on in that first line. It has something to do with mnemonics, solmization, half steps, how to call notes, and we see that fi, ma, mi, fa, and fa, mi. These are two half steps, and that indeed is going to be some part of the clue. We're going to figure it out through this. Now, the second line is the staff I mentioned in soprano clef with four half notes, F, A, B flat, and E, and above each note, he's identified them. F, he writes. A, he writes. B, which is B flat, and E, and then he writes repetitur, repeat. Now, when you look at the four letters, when you look at this actually on the page, you see that because of the size of the letters, it looks very plainly like the name Faber. Now, Faber is most likely the name of the dedicatee, although many people throughout the years have argued over who the actual recipient was. But for our purposes of understanding this just a bit simpler, let's agree that the name of this recipient was a man named Faber, in particular Benjamin Gottlieb Faber, a physician, a friend of Johann Christoph Artnikol's Bach son-in-law. Now, underneath these four notes, as I mentioned, Bach has written fa, mi, fa, mi. Okay. Fa, mi, fa, mi. Well, only two of those notes are correct in modern solfege terms. The F is fa, and the E is mi. But if we start to play this over and over again, like Bach says, repetitur, we're hearing two pairs of half steps. And if we're putting ourselves into the context of the 18th century, we probably know that this is about the debate over what to call notes. So if we're in F major, if we're actually in F major, then in fact these notes could be called mi fa, right? If we start on the first note, do or ut, and we say do, re, mi, fa. Well, here we have mi, fa. This would be called movable do in today's world. So we've got movable do, mi, fa, fixed do, mi, fa. In any case, Bach is playing with this idea. Where is the true mi, fa? Which one is up? Which one is down? Which key are we in? Are we in F major, or are we in B flat major? Are we in F major, or are we in B flat major? Or which one is really the real fa? Which one is the real mi? Which one is the leading tone? Which one is the tonic? This is really what's at the heart of the canon. The fa mi and mi fa isn't about how the half step is the unit of music. You know, it's Bach looking at this ongoing debate in the Baroque just a few decades earlier and saying, look, don't get caught up in this argument. If you call yourself a white zebra, you have black stripes. But if you call yourself a black zebra, then you have white stripes. But the truth is, you're a zebra. What Bach has seen in the name Faber is that the first four letters of the name spell out notes. It's remarkable. He sees the name Faber in his musical mind, and he thinks, that's F-A-B-E, repeat. He sees two half steps, two harmonies, and he's going to write a puzzle canon for 7 voices, by the way, on top of this. Now, one would think that just figuring out that these 4 notes of his name form 2 opposing half steps, that would be enough, you know. It's enough to settle the debate that's been going on for centuries. It's enough to solve the Guidonian hand, you know, but Bach goes further. Naturally, he does. The next line in this impressive Stammbuch entry is the text, canon super fa mi a 7 post tempus musicum. It means canon over fa mi, using this fa mi as sort of an ostinato bass line for 7 voices, post tempus musicum. That's a fancy Latin way of saying at the distance of a whole note. So you're going to have 7 voices coming in 4 beats one after the other, and the line of music sounds like this. Okay, that is the line of music. Now, I said earlier incorrectly that the voices are going to come a whole step apart. I meant a double whole step, a brev, not a semi-brev, sort of 8 beats apart. Anyways, using our knowledge we gained in the previous episode covering puzzle canons, we will bring in each voice at a time, and here we go. And here's voice 2. Just 2 voices so far. The first one starts over. The second one starts over. And now here we have the third voice entering. That's the end of the first line. Here's the first voice entering. Here's the second voice coming in again. Third voice enters again. Now our new fourth voice entering here. The fifth voice is about to enter right now. Go. A 5-voice texture. We still have 2 more voices to add. Here comes the 6th voice. Here. And finally, the last voice, voice number 7, go. I'll start dropping them out one by one. First voice is finished. And the second voice is done. Down to only 5 voices. And now down to 4 voices. Now 3. Now only 2. And here's our lonely number 7. And that is the canon that is going to go above this mi fa, mi fa. Naturally, I will add the ostinato bass. I will drop the bass. I will drop the beat so you can hear how Faber combines with the 7-voice canon that we just heard. And I will try to, put some of those lines in a few different octaves. What you just listened to was 7 voices in the same octave. That's a bit more difficult to hear all 7 voices like that. But let's go on with the analysis of the look of the page, because one of the things that one notices if one spends as much time as yours truly has done looking at these puzzle canons, you see every single one has the signature J.S. Bach, but this one, no signature. Is that a coincidence? What's going on? So this brings us to the final little piece of the puzzle, which is the dedication. I mentioned there was a Latin calligraphy, and as we learned from our wonderful scholar at St. Petersburg, the words that accompany the canon are perhaps just as important as the notes. We certainly saw that with one of the additional Goldberg variation canons, where Bach has written Christus coronabit crucigeros, how much more of a deeper layer of understanding we can attach to the canon with the phrase Christ will crown the crossbearers, how much more meaning it brings to mere notes. So here in this mi fa fa mi canon, Bach has written in Latin, Domine possessor, fidelis amici beatum esse recordari tibi haud ignotum itaque bona artis cultorem habeus verum amicum tuum, which of course translates to, Sir Owner, you hardly fail to know that to remember a faithful friend means happiness. Accordingly, take the cultivator of the good art as your true friend. 1st of March, Leipzig, 1749. Now, we're looking, as I said, for a signature here, and it's not difficult to find. Lots of these words are capitalized in very big letters. Again, look at the image I'm going to use for the post. One can see quite easily Faber in Fidelis amici beatum esse recordari. That's Faber there. And then, there's Bach in Bona artus culturum habeus. But there are 4 other letters that are capitalized. For example, the DEP in Domine possessor, and oddly enough, in amicum tuum, your friend, Bach has capitalized the letter I in amicum, not the A, right? Lowercase a-m, capital I, c-u-m, capital tuum. As early as the 19th century, again, people have been looking at this for many, many years, and Philip Spitta, the great 19th century scholar, he saw this capital IT in amicum tuum to mean, again in Latin, Eisenacho Thuringium, as in Bach from Eisenach, that's where his birthplace is, in Thuringia. But what about the capital DP, right? Another debt we owe to Mr. Milka in St. Petersburg. I now quote from his study of the canon. Looking for symmetry, it would be logical to suggest that these letters could relate to the birthplace of Benjamin Gottlieb Faber. Although this cannot be proven at the moment due to a lack of reference to the source at hand, it is worth paying attention to these letters' correspondence with Faber's native town of Dolny. In the 18th century map, mostly known today as Brzeż Dolny in Poland, in the vicinity of Breslau, forgive my pronunciation, the geopolitical affiliation in this southwestern Silesian town fluctuated between Poland and Germany. Since 1742, it had been in German possession, and the toponym was Dürnfurth, Prussia, or Latin Prussia, whose first letters P and D remarkably coincide with Dolna, Polonia. Considering that the Domine possessor, the coincidence is triple, this would have hardly escaped Bach. So, through this scholastic achievement by Mr. Milka, we see an improvement on Spitta in that the capital letters of Domine possessor at the beginning of the Latin dedication are quite possibly, like the IT at the end, indications of the birthplaces of both the giver, Bach, and the receiver, Faber. Now, just in case you're still with me, there's one glaring thing I think should blow your mind in case this puzzle canon has left it intact. mi, fa, and fa, mi, right? We figured that out. Faber, extremely cool. But Faber's name appears twice. It appears in the notes above the ostinato line, and it appears in the Latin in the capital letters as we just saw. But Bach's name has only appeared once. Why is it mi, fa, and fa, mi is all of music, but the ostinato line reads fa, mi, fa, mi? This has been unsettling me, even from the first hours I spent looking at this piece. You know, the title says fa, mi, et mi, fa, but the ostinato line does not read fa, mi, fa. It reads fa, mi, fa, mi. You have to go back to these treatises on psalmization, being about finding where the half step is. And if we come back to the half step, fa, mi, we see that it's 2 descending half steps. Do we know of any other moniker that is 2 descending half steps? O-M-G, B-A-C-H, Bach's name is 2 descending half steps. Again, let's go back to the heart of the matter. Bach has seen that his name, Bach, is 2 descending half steps. Fa, mi. But if you take Faber's name, if you take F-A-B-E, and you play it over and over and over again, you start to hear A-B-E-F, A-B-E-F. So you've got 2 ascending half steps in Faber's name. Can you see this? Can you see that this is 1 half step going up and another half step going up in Faber? And Bach is 2 descending half steps. Can you see what Bach saw in an instant? Not only a 7-voice canon, but that his name and Faber's name are 2 pairs of half steps going in opposite directions, and he makes a quick pun on the ongoing argument about what to call which notes, and then he writes a 7-voice canon on top of the argument. And then he has the chutzpah to make this incredible acrostic Latin dedication with both their names and their birthplaces. Profound. Just a glimpse into the genius of the mind that has occupied many of our lives. I'm going to play it now with the ostinato bass line. You'll hear it for a few minutes now. that's where the ostinato stops. You could hear the ostinato beating out Faber's name. Now, just a few things that are conjecture, but interesting nevertheless. One is that F-A-B-E in the musical alphabet without the R equals 14, just like B-A-C-H does. Did Bach see this? If Bach is able to see Faber as sort of the inverted motion of his own name in half steps, we could very easily imagine that Bach could see F-A-B-E also equaling his number 14. I love that thought. Bach is saying many times through this canon, you and I, we're united. We are the same person, but we're two completely different motions of a half step. That's a good way to think of all of humanity, right? We're all the same, but some of us are going in different directions. The other thing has to do with the fact that there seems to be no apparent cryptic nature to the way that Bach has dated this canon, 1st of March, 1749 in Leipzig. In the article that I will share in the episode description, Mr. Milka goes on to talk about why there could very well be another added element which has to do with his handwriting and the fact that he was going blind and that his handwriting wasn't so good. I won't bring it up in the episode because it's just too much to take in. So what we've heard here is the musical part of the consequence of solving the 7-voice canon with the ostinato line. But as you saw throughout this episode, there's so much more going on here. I'm going to stop the episode here. I know it's a lot to take in, and I don't want to throw another puzzle canon at you quite yet. I might want to try and illustrate some of this episode, in fact, with video. I've done that with a few videos from the podcast, most recently with the 6-voice triplex canon, the one he's holding in his portrait. So if visualization helps you out, then go check out the YouTube channel, where I'm also posting twice a week my own playing through Bach's keyboard works, and you can follow along with the score there. I've got subtitles sort of guiding you along the pieces I play it. And I will put some excellent resources to read more about these puzzle canons in the episode description. That article by Milka, along with a wonderful book by a scholar I admire named David Yearsley. And, as usual, spread this podcast around, share it with your friends, bring it to the pub, write me love messages, tell me what you want to learn about, because I'm learning with you. Really, I did not know half of this stuff when I set out to cover this piece, and now this mi fa et fa mi has a much deeper meaning to me, so thank you for suggesting it, thanks for listening, and I will see you in a few weeks, hopefully with something equally as interesting. Thanks.
This is WTF Bach. Donate on PayPal, Cash App, or Venmo. Have you not joined Evan's Substack? It's the only place for you to find all the things in the mind of Evan Schenners. WTFBach.substack.com. Share this podcast with your frenemies. Wow, that's fabulous.